Good evening, dear friends.
Good evening.
It's really wonderful to speak to you from the Dharma seat again. It's one of the great pleasures of my life. Much of what I have to tell you today comes from two books. Sotoshi's translation of the Denkoroku for information about Sosan, the third Zen patriarch, and Trust in Mind, The Rebellion of Chinese Zen by Mu Soeng. It's a commentary on Trust in Mind. Soeng lives at the Bar Center for Buddhist Studies in Massachusetts, where he's been a resident Buddhist scholar for over 30 years. I highly recommend his book if you're interested in the background of this poem, Trust in Mind, particularly his discussion in chapter 2 of the differences between Indian culture and Chinese culture that led to the development of Chan. So I want you to know that the subject of my talk tonight is the fault of a friend of mine, a college friend who lives in Minnesota and is married to a Zen student who writes incredible poetry. So these two individuals were cleaning out the attic of another Zen student who had passed away, and they found a box full of these little booklets of Trust in Mind. And they sent me a whole box full of them. There must be about 75 copies of it, so I'm sharing this gift with you. But I was really pleased to receive them because Trust in Mind has always been one of my favorite Zen texts. I chose it for my Shuso term and ceremony. I used the last stanza of this poem as my text for that whole time. So it's really something that's close to my heart. So it's their fault that I'm talking about Trust in Mind tonight. That's where I got the inspiration. So Trust in Mind is considered to be a poem. It's dated about the 6th century, and it's, the exact date is a little bit wiggly, but it's commonly attributed to Xinxinming, and I will only say his name that way once because somehow my mouth doesn't want to go there, but it's Kanchi Sosan, who is the Zen's third Chinese ancestor, one of the original 6 patriarchs of Zen. Although we really don't hear much about him in the Zen stories, he's not somebody who's very well known. The translation that's used in the booklet that I passed out is by Richard B. Clark. But and this translation is probably familiar to many people, but there are many translations of this poem and many commentaries written about it. So Mu Soeng's book is one of many books out there on this particular poem. And you will notice in this booklet that it's titled Verses on the Faith Mind. But it's also called Trust in Mind. It's translated as Trust in Mind, and you might find it under other different titles. One of the wonderful things about Soeng's book is that he has an appendix in the back of it where he compares different translations of the poem. So it's about, I think he used about 6 different translations and compares them to each other. So that's a very valuable thing if you're interested in that sort of thing like I am. So what do we know about Kanchi Sosan? I, of course, turned to Soto Shu's Dankoroku, another one of my favorite texts, to see what Great Master Keizan had to say about him. No one knows what his family background was. He just kind of showed up in front of Taiso Eka in a white robe when he was about 40 years old. And the dialogue between him and Taiso Eka went something like this. Kanchi Sosan asked Taiso Eka, your disciple's body, he was talking about himself, is afflicted with a contagious disease. Please, Reverend, help me repent my sins. Eka said, bring me your sins, and I will allow you repentance. Sosan paused for a long while and then said, I have searched for my sins, but cannot obtain them. Eka said, I have finished giving you the right of repenting sin. You should take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha and dwell therein. Keizan says later in his talk about this particular incident that Sosan was afflicted with leprosy, which gradually left him as he studied with Eka. Other interpretations of this particular story say that he was instantly cured. His name, Xinxinming, means Sangha gemstone. One of the reasons we don't hear very much about him is because he studied with Eka for about 2 years, and then he received Dharma transmission. And Eka told him about a prediction that had come from, Bodhidharma, and had yet to be fulfilled. And he thought it was about Sosan. And so he advised him to go into the mountains and hide out there. Which turned out to be good advice because the Emperor Wu, shortly after that, prohibited all Buddhism, and monasteries were torn down and monks were killed, and it was one of those violent times. So Sosan spent 10 years hiding out on Mount Wanggong, dressing as a layman. But he did manage to create at least one disciple who was Dai Doshin, the 4th Zen patriarch. After things calmed down, Sosan eventually returned to teaching in public, although we don't have any record that he was associated with any mountain or any particular monastery, which was common for most great Zen masters. They'll say, he's such and such Zen master of Mount whatever. So to not have he was not apparently located in any specific place to do his teaching. And we don't have any accounting of how many disciples he actually had, which is also something that is often included in these stories in the Dankoroku to illustrate the greatness of the Zen master. But we can contact the reality of his enlightenment through his writing in this poem. So, Trust in Mind could be viewed as a sort of instruction manual for deconstructing our erroneous perceptions of reality. We mistakenly perceive that things have permanence and a stable sort of being. When, as we know, the Buddha taught that all things are impermanent, they're continually changing from moment to moment. Soeng has a fascinating discussion of what he calls being/becoming. He says, there's always a subject in the process of being reconfigured, however slightly or subtly. So we are the subject, and we see these objects out there that we take as permanent. Our small minds tend to mistake a brief moment of perception of a thing or a person as the totality of that thing or person. The reality is that that thing or person is changing in every single moment. All of us have the experience of meeting an old friend or a family member who persists in viewing us as the person we were 20 or 30 years ago, when that person bears little resemblance to the person we are in this moment. We, in the throes of becoming, change our bodies, our minds, our perspectives in every moment. When we let go of our mistaken perceptions in Zazen, we can prove to ourselves that our fleeting perceptions of things or people are often mistaken unless we remain open and attentive to what is happening now in our relationships. Trust in mind provides the antidote to these misperceptions. It says, if you wish to see the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. It comes back to what Bob said in one of his talks, which I will never forget and continue to repeat, is that Buddha's way is an alternative way of being human in this world. It is possible through Zazen to, I don't know how to say this exactly, flip into a different perception, a different way of being, a different way of seeing things. And it's so easy to forget that as we go about our daily lives. Trust in mind can remind us to remember our task. So I'd like us to go ahead and read the poem together at this point, and not chant it, but to just read it together. That way you'll get the flavor of it on Zoom. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. When the deep meaning of things is not understood, the mind's essential peace is disturbed to no avail. The way is perfect like vast space, where nothing is lacking and nothing is in excess. Indeed, it is due to our choosing to accept or reject that we do not see the true nature of things. Live neither in the entanglements of outer things nor in inner feelings of emptiness. Be serene in the oneness of things, and such erroneous views will disappear by themselves. When you try to stop activity to achieve passivity, your very effort fills you with activity. As long as you remain in one extreme or the other, you will never know oneness. Those who do not live in the single way fail in both activity and passivity, assertion and denial. To deny the reality of things is to miss their reality. To assert the emptiness of things is to miss their reality. The more you talk and think about it, the further astray you wander from the truth. Stop talking and thinking, and there is nothing you will not be able to know. To return to the root is to find the meaning, but to perceive appearances is to miss the source. At the moment of inner enlightenment, there is a going beyond appearance and emptiness. The changes that appear to occur in the empty world we call real only because of our ignorance. Do not search for the truth. Only cease to cherish opinions. Do not remain in the dualistic state. Avoid such pursuits carefully. If there is even a trace of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind essence will be lost in confusion. Although all dualities come from the one, do not be attached even to this one. When the mind exists undisturbed in the way, nothing in the world can offend. And when a thing can no longer offend, it ceases to exist in the old way. When no discriminating thoughts arise, the old mind ceases to exist. When thoughts objects vanish, the thinking subject vanishes. As when the mind vanishes, objects vanish. Things are objects because of the subject, mind. The mind, subject, is such because of things, object. Understand the relative of these two, and the base reality, the unity of emptiness. In this emptiness, the two are indistinguishable, and each contains in itself the whole world. If you do not discriminate between coarse and fine, you will not be tempted to prejudice and opinion. To live in the great way is neither easy nor difficult, but those with limited views are fearful and irresolute. The faster they hurry, the slower they go, and clinging attachment cannot be limited. Even to be attached to the idea of enlightenment is to go astray. Just let things be in their own way, and there will be neither coming nor going. Obey the nature of things, your own nature, and you will walk freely and undisturbed. When thought is in bondage, the truth is hidden, for everything is murky and unclear, and the burdensome practice of judging brings annoyance and weariness. What benefit can be derived from distinctions and separations? If you wish to move in the one way, do not dislike even the world of senses and ideas. Indeed, to accept them fully is identical with true enlightenment. The wise man strives to know goals, but the foolish man fetters himself. There is one Dharma, not many. Distinctions arise from the clinging needs of the ignorant. To seek mind with the discriminating mind is the greatest of all mistakes. Rest and unrest derive from illusion. With enlightenment, there is no liking or disliking. All dualities come from ignorant inference. They are like dreams or flowers in the air. Foolish try to grasp them. Gain and loss, right and wrong, such thoughts must finally be abolished at once. If the eye never sleeps, all dreams will naturally cease. If the mind makes no discriminations, the 10,000 things are as they are of single essence. To understand the mystery of this one essence is to be released from all entanglements. When all things are seen equally, the timeless self-essence is reached. No comparisons or analogies are possible in this causeless, relationless state. Consider movement stationary and the stationary in motion. Both movement and rest disappear. When such dualities cease to exist, oneness itself cannot exist. To this ultimate finality, no law or description applies. For the unified mind, in accord with the way, all self-centered striving ceases. Doubts and irresolutions vanish, and life in true faith is possible. With a single stroke, we are freed from bondage. Nothing clings to us, and we hold to nothing. All is empty, clear, self-illuminating, with no exertion of the mind's power. Here, thought, feeling, knowledge, and imagination are of no value. In this world of suchness, there is neither self nor other than self. To come directly into harmony with this reality, just simply say when doubt arises, not to. In this not to, nothing is separate, nothing is excluded. No matter when or where, enlightenment means entering this truth. And this truth is beyond extension or diminution in time or space. In a single thought is 10,000 years. Emptiness here, emptiness there, but the infinite universe stands always before your eyes. Infinitely large and infinitely small, no difference, for definitions have vanished and no boundaries are seen. So true with being and non-being. Don't waste time in doubts and arguments that have nothing to do with this. One thing, all things, move among and intermingle without distinction. To live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection. To live in this faith is the road to non-duality, because the non-dual is one with the trusting mind. Words, the way is beyond language, for in it there is no yesterday, no tomorrow, no today. Thank you. So there's so much in here. Books have been written about it. I'm not going to try to explicate it this evening. We would be here for hours. But the thing that, one of the lines in this last stanza that I particularly found relevant is to live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection. It's about how we let go of judging ourselves, actually, in our lives. And we let go of our non-perfection and have no anxieties about it if we can enter this state of enlightenment. It also, the last stanza there talks about the way being beyond language. And Chan, during this particular time in its development, was very insistent that what one needed to grasp or intuitively learn to know was beyond language, that language could not be used to describe it, as we have often talked about. So this was in the 6th century. And we also see in this echoes of what Dogen Zenji wrote in Genjo Koan that we're studying on Saturday mornings. He talks about whole worlds being within the enlightenment, within the one. And also this talks about stop talking and thinking. And Dogen Zenji and Fukanza Zenge says, think non-thinking. So we see that these concepts that were present in China at this time were picked up and continue to be promulgated by Dogen Zenji in his writings. So I find that very interesting to get these little resonances from different texts. So in this Realizing Genjo Koan, the book we're studying on Saturdays, Okamura Roshi says, to see one reality from both sides is the basic viewpoint of Mahayana Buddhism, including Zen. And he continues, it is important that we have more than just an intellectual understanding of these two aspects of reality that Dogen talks about in Genjo Koan. We should actually manifest these views with our actions, which is exactly what Sosan is talking about in Trust in Mind, manifesting the one by letting go of dualities. Our task in practice is to transform our perception of reality through Zazen, so we can actually see what is happening in front of our very eyes. I find it valuable to bring forward these stories about the ancient ancestors, the ones that happened long ago, to see that they really connect with us in spite of the fact that the culture and reality that we live in seems to be so different. And yet the practice is exactly the same as it used to be. And it's really important for us to know about the ancestors, some of those ancient ancestors, and what they taught, because it's so easy to disregard tradition in this particular culture. And these traditions that we hold here are so ancient, so ancient. And it's important to preserve them as much as we can. There's a story in the glossary of the Denkoroku, which is a huge volume. It's like this. And there's all kinds of information in there that Sotoshu has collected. That's about a traveler who meets another traveler on the road. And the second traveler asks the first traveler to buy this particular text that he has in 5 volumes, which is so that he will have enough money to continue his travels. And so the first traveler gives the man the money and takes the 5 volumes. And can you imagine, a lot of times people traveled with just what they had with them on their back. So you take 5 volumes of, it was probably scrolls or something in those days, but so not heavy like the books that we have. But still, made room in his pack for these 5 volumes, took them with him, and eventually became the abbot of a monastery. And he, these were the Denkoroku, and he went through and checked them with other texts. And he actually went to a lot of work to make sure that these texts were authentic and that they were correct. And he recopied them and spent a lot of time preserving the Denkoroku. So it's important that we preserve these texts and we read them and we study them so that we can carry forward this tradition that we've been given. So thanks to my friends who sent this to me and gave me a little goose to talk about this particular ancestor and his writing, which is really all that we have of him, this trust in mind.